The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Friday, June the 26th, 2026. And we're live here at CHD TV. So just stay tuned after my first interview because we have, with doctors and scientists, Andy Wakefield is on with his new book, The Bequest. And just to remind you all, if you go to Instagram after the show, because that's when it starts, there you go, Andrew J. Wakefield on Instagram. He's doing a live book launch, so maybe some of you can go over there and join him on that. But let's get up the headline first of all for this morning. It's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is pushing to wean Americans off SSRIs, a psychiatrist weighs in. And so who better than to talk about this subject, years and years of experience, than Dr. Gary Null. Good morning.
Thank you, Polly. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, I just want our viewers to know we have a lot of new viewers, as in people that haven't been around as long as we both have in this. I've been doing this for 30 years. And I remember back in the day, I mean, everybody wanted to be on the Gary Null show. You've been doing this for years. You not only do you have this amazing radio show, but you also have written a load of books and amazing documentaries as well. Could you tell our new viewers about yourself, please?
Well, I'm a PhD in human nutrition and public health science, a registered dietitian, a board-certified clinical nutritionist. I was the senior research fellow in anti-aging medicine, director of its department at the Institute of Applied Biology for 36 years every day, and another 4 years when I started doing the long-term clinical studies. I've authored many papers. I am the author of over 1,033 papers. And I've testified before different committees of government, and I've led over 227 different major efforts, demonstrations, to get the public aware that we have been misled or lied to. And so in different areas. I'm an environmentalist. I'm also an athlete and have been Athlete of the Year in many different, New York and now in Florida where I'm at. And I'm right now, my biggest issue is I believe, Polly, that the hard-hitting investigative articles are going to be secondary. I believe if we want to make a difference, all of us in the health field, that we have to touch the heart, not just stimulate the mind. We have too many people who are overly indoctrinated. Good people, and most people are good people, but they're getting the wrong information and then acting on that and then ending up with negative consequences. So I want to help them become the architect of their own life and take back the wrong projections. If you change a person's perspective and perception, you can change their reality. If all we do is align ourselves with this, that, or that other group, we're not going to do anything. We're going to be under someone else's control. And that's what we're seeing today. The bad news is virtually all of our major institutions we've trusted and been a part of have betrayed us at different levels. So now I'm interested in seeing if we can't do something positive about that.
Yeah, and Dr. Null, I mean, one of the biggest concerns we've got with the young people at the moment is that they're on so many SSRIs. We're starting to record stories of suicide and really bad mental disorders. Could you update us on what you think is going on here? And where's the science?
Right. Also, something happened with my monitor, so the main light went out. I'll give you an example. In 2022, there was a study that came out that was published in one of the most respected journals in the world. It was in the Organic Psychiatry journal. It was by a highly respected woman physician and neurologist and scientist. And she didn't do it piecemeal. She got together the best colleague scientists she could. They all got together and they decided now is the time to present this definitive article. And what she did was this. Every ad you've ever seen on television, and I'm sure Robert, and I respect the work that Robert's doing under incredible circumstances, but he's done good work. But what we now see is that every ad says, this is to help a brain chemical imbalance, the SSRIs. Take them, Prozac, the Paxil, all of the important ones, because they'll help you with your depression, they'll help you with your mental illnesses of all types, anxiety disorders, bipolar disorders. And no one ever asked, where's the proof? So she said, let's take a look. And there was no proof. And in the most important article, I believe, published in a scientific journal involving mental health ever, she showed that there is no science backing up the brain chemical imbalance. Now, yes, if you take medications, if you take certain vaccines, you can cause neurological damage. You can literally disrupt the neurons, the tau tangles. You can do all this to the brain, but it doesn't help it, it hurts it. So the very thing that's supposed to be helping us was actually hurting us, and they had no science, zero science backing them up. So she published it, and they attacked her. She had an impeccable career to that moment. So here we are. We're told overall in science that if you do something that's important, if you do a clinical study, if you find a discovery and other people can duplicate it using your same protocol, that's the gold standard, replication with the same results. 67% of all scientific studies cannot be replicated. That means 67% of all the peer-reviewed journals are polluted. That means also that hundreds of millions of dollars are given to peer reviewers. Well, that's new. Well, how then does a peer reviewer stay honest and objective if they're getting money from let's say a manufacturer? How's that help us? It doesn't, it hurts us. So we can't trust the system. The system's flawed. The so-called let science be the final arbiter of all truths is wrong. So she brought that out. And nowhere in the media have you seen that very important study. And today's scientists, psychiatrists are still prescribing even more prescriptions. Upwards of 22% of women 22 to 45 are taking some SSRI every day, and they'll be on it till life. So if you want depression, take the antidepressive drug, and you can get depression. That's one of its side effects. You want to get rid of anxiety? Well, you're going to have more anxiety when you take the drug. And are these better than a placebo? The answer is no. So we've been lied to about everything. I did an award-winning documentary called Manufacturing Madness, which hopefully in the near future your audience will see. And I've written many articles on this, including the drugging of our children. So where we're at today is this. I believe that we can no longer stay in the platforms we are. We have to change our methods. We have to join together and say, okay, we went after the COVID lies and we've succeeded up to this point in exposing them. Now it's up to Congress with the subpoenaing of Anthony Fauci to show the criminal activity that it wasn't just one Wuhan lab or Ralph Barrick, University of North Carolina, who created this, but it was also 121 other laboratories, secret laboratories, only manufacturing biological weapons to harm and kill people that we, the taxpayer, didn't know about, and they lied before Congress. And there's no statute of limitations on crimes against humanity, and you can't pardon that. You can't do a preventive pardon, and that'll be challenged. So it's Anthony Fauci's turn to be put into a place where he'll be asked questions he can't lie about and get away with. So what we have to do is we have to look at the topics that make a difference. For example, one of the most important topics of the top 5 topics affecting Americans is we need universal health care. But the Democrats and Republicans both have gotten money from Big Pharma, from hospital corporations, from groups of investors, from hedge funds to equity partners, to BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard. They've been influenced. Only a small number of the legislators have not. So I did this. I took thousands of hours and I simply looked at where are we spending $5 trillion a year and just in the healthcare business. But I don't find that we're providing healthcare. And so I said, what would it take so all of us could go to a doctor or hospital, no matter what the procedure, we could walk out of there and it wouldn't bankrupt us. We'd have a good treatment that would also include all proven natural and non-toxic therapies, whether it's Ayurvedic medicine, naturopathic medicine, homeopathic medicine, energy medicine, any of the therapies that are published by the thousands of articles in the National Library of Medicine, but denied by the editors of Wikipedia, because they only want you taking their protocols. So when you Google natural approaches to cancer, it doesn't take you to the articles that are out there, the evidence that supports natural approaches. Google takes you right to Wikipedia. They have an association. So you're getting biased information, corrupted information, not accurate information. So what I did is this. I broke down every single thing that causes disease. I went to the organizations, American Heart Association, the American Pediatric Association. I looked, where do they get their money? What is the advice they've given? How often has that advice been good, accurate, or wrong and causing harm? So I wrote a major paper on this called Death by Medicine, and it showed that iatrogenesis, medically induced disease and death, was the #1 cause of death in the United States. The AMA said it was #3, but they didn't use all the right statistics. They didn't use infections, gangrene deaths, and they didn't count people who die when they get home. You get out of the hospital, you go home, and a week later you're dead from the very treatment you got. So I did all that work with 5 other leading medical doctors and scientists. And what we came up with was we could have universal health care that would save $1.7 trillion a year. So over 10 years, you're saving close to $18 trillion, not costing us $20 trillion is what they've been claiming. Oh, it'll cost $2 trillion a year if we have universal health care. It's not true. Just the opposite true. But you have to do this. You have to rein in the excess profiteering. I made a list of the top 10 medications taken every day in the United States. The least profit margin I could find between the 30-day generic and the end product is 3,000% markup. I found 100,000+% markup. So a little bit of change in a product's price is not doable. We've got to cap it at 200% profit. They can make no more. That's a 200% profit. A food store makes about 6% profit at most. So we've got to get rid of all their lies and all their schemes and outlaw lobbying to legislators, make it a federal offense. But then you pay for all doctors' tuition right through. And you get rid of the torturous process of taking extra years, which is not beneficial for internship and residency. You can shorten that. And you don't have a doctor working 2 shifts and think they're going to do a good job. I don't want to be in a doctor's care if they're not haven't slept in 30 hours. So you bring humanity back into the educational process. You change the curriculum so doctors are learning about real healing that exists and always has. It's just been denied to us. Then you pay for that education, but in the pay for the education, so a doctor gets out of medical school internship, and once they go into internship and residency, they get paid $300,000 a year. So for all that benefit to the doctor, they have to, on their side, cap what they can make. And that savings comes back to the people. Then they no longer can be sued. Just like in Florida and other states, you have no-fault insurance. You cannot have all these people saying that a drug caused this or a procedure caused that. May or may not have. You have one pool of money, so the doctor themselves cannot be sued. And 1% of their income goes into that, so that's paying for these suits and take a lot of the incentive for these huge payouts to happen. Some doctors paying $200,000 to $300,000 a year in malpractice. Then you get rid of the fraud, that's about $300 billion. And then you have prevention. We have no prevention today. Our Surgeon General doesn't prevent anything. Right now, today, with the exception, there's one exception, that's Robert Kennedy. There's not a word about real prevention in action. I want to see health clinics in every city and town in America where you can go in there and free of charge, you can have someone who's qualified and licensed as a dietitian, nutritionist to show you what a healthy diet is and put in the tools in there, such as the exercise, the stress management, the detoxification, the intermittent fasting, by the way, which I discovered in 2001 at the Institute of Applied Biology by fasting rats. I fasted 1,000 rats from night until next morning, and they increased their lifespan by 22%. So you include these things, then you show the truth. For the first time in American history, you show the truth about everything we do, no lies. If you lose your job, so be it. I'd rather lose my job and be condemned by telling the truth than be coddled and accepted and profited by lying to people. We've had too many people in power. In fact, everyone in power, in my opinion, unfortunately does not serve the interest of the public first. They serve their own interest. So you get people who can tell you the truth. Here's what happens if you eat trans fats. Here's what happens if you eat saturated fats. Here's what happens if you have carbonated beverages. Here's what happens if you had all these chemicals, coloring agents and sugars and fructose in a children's cereal. That was never the way cereal was supposed to be made. Then you show the proper way of feeding people and exercising 15,000 steps a day. I've got a little step counter right here. I put it on my body every day. That tells me that I'm doing the steps I need to keep my metabolism good. I take a walk after every meal. That keeps my blood sugar down. We need basic information. We need the truth, and it's everywhere. It's just that it's not in the control of those at the CDC, the FDA. So they parse a little bit of truth in, but Big Pharma still has enormous control, as does Big Food, and the corporations they control. Remember, it's not, is a Coke better than a Pepsi, better than a 7-Up? No, it's irrelevant, because the same companies, the same 5 companies, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, Berkshire Hathaway, and Fidelity, control the stock in those companies, thousands of companies, and every bank, and every pharmaceutical company. So they control everything. This guy here, Larry Fink at BlackRock, he's the most powerful man in the world. He's more powerful than the President of the United States by a margin of 100 times. He controls $14 trillion, much of it your money, most of it your money. He controls the pensions. So when they make a mistake, and boy, if anyone invested in the X stock, that was a mistake, because look where the stock is going. But all those people got in, shorted, went down. We need people who are not going to be shorting us when it comes to health. So I've written this manifesto for bringing back health, happiness, joy, pleasure into the average person's life so they don't go broke if they get a stomach ache. A friend of mine had a stomach ache. That's it. Went to an emergency room, sat there. They gave him a hot water bottle and an IV drip, which cost about $10, charged him $10,000. That's how bad the system is. All for profiteering, gutting anything resembling natural approaches. They don't want you to prevent a disease because they profit when you've got it. So then you look at all the advertisements, 98% of all advertisements are making you sick. And then they treat you with a drug once you become sick. Now you see an advertisement for tics, where your tongue darts out, your eyes shift up. Well, that was caused because of Thorazine that they promoted for people for almost 30 years. Well, now we've got a drug for the side effects of a drug that should never have been approved and used to begin with. So that's how they play the game. And they bring these so-called doctors and experts on who are all lying about everything all the time. I've debated probably 400 debates in my career, and I don't see them telling the truth. So now, if you go to GaryNull.com, you'll see all of the different things I published, the documentaries, everything there. But then go to Gary Null Substack or my newsletter, and you'll see a 4-part series that we all should be focused on now of how we can get us universal health care. Now, that's a big issue, because right now this year, bankruptcy, the number one cause is going to be health bills. And they've got all the legislators on their side. So we have to have the truth on our side, but join together, as we did with COVID, as you all did, as Mary did and Mary Holland, and make us aware that we have the tools to prevent disease in the first place. Think of how much money that would save, suffering it would save, that we can live longer lives. Now, this is the last point. I'm sorry to run on like this, but I just finished my 6th anti-aging study. I've done 6 in the last 6 years. They've been supported by the UCLA Clock Center that has the patent on the DNA methylation test. And what that test does is you take it at the beginning, a little blood sample, and you take it at the end. The first one was 3 months. I had a group of people who followed a very exacting protocol. It was a very comprehensive protocol, the only time ever done in American scientific history. At the end of 3 months, when we took the blood again, it took them about 3 months to do all the measurements. My chronological age was suddenly reduced at the biological level by 14.1 years. I'll repeat that. I became 14 years younger at my actual cells, the DNA. And then I go through the mechanisms on how that happened. How can you reverse the DNA? We've all known that you could prevent premature aging by doing exercise, eating better foods. There are lots of studies on that, and good. But there's never been a study showing we can actually reverse it in a group of people. So you don't have to be 50 or 70 or 65, or you can be 10, 20, 30 years. By the way, that was in 3 months. So I've been living like this as a vegan, an athlete, marathoner, 84 marathons, etc., my whole life. So then I did a big study that just finished, just this week. We're taking the final blood, and already some of the results are, oh, this person in 9 months, this is a 9-month study, they reversed their biological aging of their heart, their lungs, their brain, because it tells you by organ how old they are. Isn't that nice? And one person who's 73, they reversed their biological aging by 4.2 years. 4.2 years. Well, what if they keep that up? What if they keep doing what they did for 9 months? They just do it on a regular basis. How much younger can you get? That's the next study that I'm going to be doing. So I just want people to know that we can reverse the aging process. We can reverse and prevent the disease process, but we can't do it believing the FDA, the CDC, and other governmental agencies, or the ads on television, or the corporations who pay for that ads, pay for the control over our lives. So that's why I'm writing essays. My essays are not hard-hitting. At the scientific level, they deal with the poetry of life, the common sense issues. My latest one, which just published yesterday, and you can hear it. All of them are like a talking book. These are talking essays. The lies we accept and the truths we reject. And it goes into deep. I use historical analysis. I use famous philosophers to show you how the truth for all of our ills, everything is wrong. Bankruptcy, cancer, wars, crime everywhere, the fear that we go on a subway, we could be hurt. All of these are the issues that we face every day. And that's why I'm trying to touch a person's heart with the truth. And I would have thought that we would have had people within the greater liberal community, but you don't hear their voices anymore. And when you do, like a Chris Hedges, it's been censored. Abby Martin censored. So hopefully that gives you a little better insight.
Yeah, Dr. Null, thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're out of time and I have a ton of questions for you, so we're going to have to get you back on again. But just before we go, just to put people's minds at rest, when you talk about anti-aging, you're not doing anything sinister there, like drinking children's blood.
Oh, come on, Polly.
Had to ask. Had to ask.
What I'm seeing out there is just nonsense.
Right.
Look, I've spent my whole adult life in anti-aging medicine. I'm in front of 3 cameras, a camera that's 3 feet away with high resolution. I got 3 lights at 500 watts. I have no makeup. All right, this is me, this is my hair, and there's nothing artificial here. But if you do the right things consistently, I'll have a fresh glass of orange juice once a week. No, if you are on the right side of the choices you make, and there's a consequence to every choice, including the small choices. Well, I'm at a party, so what, I'll have some tequila? No, you're going to kill 5 million cells minimally without 1 glass of tequila. But we make the ads for tequila look really sexy and good, and let me be a part of that. So we're just being manipulated, and we've been manipulated since Edward Monet started the whole field of advertising and propaganda and influencing us, making I want that to a need. I need that. No, we don't need a lot. My last little piece of advice is everything that I'm sharing is common sense and intuitively wise. So if you do the right thing, it's because you're living in pure consciousness, and we're living in a manipulated consciousness. Other people want to know everything about us. They can control our next move, our next purchase, the next food we eat. And that's why today only 1% of Americans identify as plant-based eating. 1%. Wow, it shows you how powerful advertising and propaganda is, and instead of doing the right thing at the right time.
Dr. Null, it's so fascinating. And I can't thank you enough for all the work you've done throughout the years. Like I say, you were the only voice back in the day when my son was diagnosed with autism that I heard. And I'm extremely grateful to you and everything. Please do come back on. I want to talk much more on this. We don't do enough on how to live right. We spend a lot of time telling people what not to do, and we don't do anything on what you could do. So please do come back on.
I'll be happy to. Go to Gary Null Substack, and you'll see articles that I believe every single person in your audience will appreciate. For example, everyone can make better choices if they're coming from love. But we think love is something you have to go and find, or you fall out and you fall in. Nonsense. So that's one essay. The other is on how can we stop the lies that we've been told, and how can we stop lying to ourselves? Because once you stop lying to yourself, you won't accept lies from anyone else. And stop apologizing for other people's mistakes. Apologize for your own. Learn the lesson of that mistake. So when you go forward, you're going forward with the truth. You're going forward knowing that we are connected. We have far more in common than we have in opposition, and we should stop being tribalized and commodified and commercialized and weaponized. We're human beings. I don't care if you're Democrat or Republican, conservative or liberal, atheist or true believer. You're still a sacred, sentient person until you choose not to be. And there are people who don't want us to be. They're terrified of unity. Because if we wake up, and the silent majority has better wake up because you're running out of time. You think you have time? The Buddha said, you think you have time? You don't have time. We're at a critical point where we must act and act now. And thank you for all the good work, Polly, that you and others have done.
Thank you, Dr. Null. We look forward to getting you back on CHD TV very, very soon. And to our viewers, we're going to go to Brian Hooker with Doctors and Scientists with Andy Wakefield now.
Well, good morning, CHD. It is Friday, and that means it's time for Doctors and Scientists. I am not going to spend a lot of time with the intro today because we need to get right to the guest. When you have a guest like Dr. Andrew Wakefield, you don't waste time introducing him, the man who needs no introduction. Andy, welcome to the show.
Brian, great to be here. Thank you so much.
Talk about taking lemons and making lemonade. Okay. It seemed like the entire Commonwealth was against you and took away your license to practice medicine. You were struck off wrongfully, absolutely wrongfully. I can't think of an injustice that I can't think of a justice that is greater than you being stricken off. Your last movie, I want to talk about Protocol 7. You've become a film director, and one of the best films that I think I've ever seen, exposing the darkness around the pharmaceutical industry, is Protocol 7. Everybody has to see that. Can we still see that movie online?
Absolutely. If you go to the new website, which is thebequest.co, then you can find it there. Scroll down.
Okay, well, that is not why we're here today, because we're talking about a new project that you're working on, and I'm so excited about this project. I've heard, we've talked just briefly, conceptually about what you're doing. Tell us a little bit more about what Andy Wakefield did for a summer vacation, or likewise. So.
Well, this goes back a long way, Brian, if you've got the time. And it's an interesting story. And it starts in about 2011. I was at an autism conference in America, and I'd given a talk. And that evening, I was taken out to dinner by a mother who was, she had one child, a severely affected child, nonverbal, with profound autism, and she had helped organize the conference. And over dinner, she asked me if I would father a child for her. Now, that may to all the world sound like a very strange thing to be talking about on the show, and a very strange thing even to ask me in the first place. But it wasn't. Her motives were entirely sincere. She wasn't after romance or passion. What she wanted, Brian, and you will completely understand this, is as a mother, what she wanted was to have a healthy child who could grow up to look after, to care for her autistic son when she became infirm or died. And this is, I don't have to tell you, this is one of the issues that plagues millions of parents across the country and around the world every night. keeps them awake? What happens to my child when I die? Because when I'm no longer here, no one else cares about them in the way that I do. No one understands them, and indeed, no one loves them. And so what will happen? And it's an issue that has never really been addressed, and one which I was inspired to address by this mother's request. It was extreme. It was entirely sincere, and really was a reflection of the love a mother has for her child. And so I wrote it as a screenplay initially, and as you do with these things, I put it on the shelf until the time was right, and then I started going back through it recently. And Hollywood is in a parlous state, particularly financially, and very much something of its own making. And money for this kind of film is hard to come by. But my assistant said to me, "You should write this as a book." And I thought, raise awareness of this story through a book, and then the movie gets made based upon the book. Well, this was a book based upon a screenplay, and the movie hopefully will come from that. So that's the objective. The objectives of twofold. One is to get this very, very important issue in the public eye and in front of politicians, and to get the movie made, because that will get a lot more eyes on it and have an even greater impact on those politicians and public. So that was my aim. I wrote the book, and it's coming out the 26th of June.
This is set in the late 1800s. It's such a compelling story. And I have to tell you, having an only child who is developmentally disabled and needs 24/7 care, it's so daunting. And raising awareness around this, I can't thank you enough for doing that, because we don't know what our actual plan will be for him. We are working that out with fear and trembling, trying to figure out what the best trajectory for my son will be. Besides my wife and I living until we're 130, 140 years old. I haven't figured that one out quite yet.
No, it's a real issue, and something that absolutely has to be addressed. I think, you and I have been working on the cause issue, the role
Right.
of vaccines, and that has gathered a momentum now that I believe means that it will resolve itself. It's frustratingly slow to so many of us because there is such resistance to the truth emerging. But nonetheless, the market always wins. And the market in this case is the consumer, particularly the parents, and they will have the final say. And if they don't want to take their vaccines, they will not take them. So it doesn't matter what they do. And in many cases, it's enhanced by what they do and what they say, and the urgency and almost panic with which they say it that really alerts people to the problems that are inherent in the vaccine policy. So that's something that will be resolved in due course. This is an issue that has not been raised. And one of the reasons for setting this in the 1867 on the Oregon Trail as a Western was again twofold. One was to not detract from this critical issue of what happens when I'm no longer here, not to detract from that by getting into the thorny issue of causation if it had been a contemporary story. So that's
right.
Number one. The other is I wanted to put it in an environment which was brutal. That here were a mother and her child struggling to survive in a land where that was all but certain, where there were freezing cold and plagues and Native American Indian attacks, death, disease, famine, just making it as difficult as possible. So it's really a story about a mother's love and her ability to prevail or not in those circumstances. The other thing I think you'll appreciate about the book, Brian, is the salvation, or a very important event in the story is an understanding of the son, her nonverbal son's
Right.
extraordinary abilities. And this is something that plays very much into the closing chapters of the book. But it came about because years ago I was in Northern California, not far from where you are, and I met a child who would write poetry. He was a nonverbal child with severe autism, and he would write the most extraordinary poetry. It was humorous, it was idiosyncratic, and it was very well informed.
Mm-hmm.
He wrote me a poem. He wrote me several poems, but he wrote me one called "Who's That Monkey on Your Back?" And it was a story about the attack on me from a journalist in the United Kingdom that ultimately led to my license being taken away. He wrote these poems by pointing at a letterboard. Sometimes, because he had difficulty coordinating, his therapist would hold his elbow, support his elbow. Anyway, I went to a colleague of mine, of ours, who I thought to be open-minded and would find this fascinating. He was furious, absolutely furious that I was wasting his time with such an obvious scam. And I was perplexed because not only was he physically able to do it, this child,
Right.
he also was writing poetry for me about what had happened in the United Kingdom. And his therapist, who this person alleged was actually just moving his hand to the relevant letters, had absolutely no interest, zero interest in me or what happened to me in the United Kingdom. So he'd completely missed this. But
Right.
this boy would now be called a speller. He is a speller. And it was an extraordinary observation way back then. And of course, that's now gained tremendous momentum with the movie Spellers and
Right.
Baby Hanley and his son. So that plays very much into the story as well.
Well, again, bringing this to the public, through the book, through the screenplay, and then hopefully soon through the movie, is so vital, and it's so important because these kids are completely underestimated. I know this because my son is a speller, and the metamorphosis of him and our entire family over the past now 2.5 years since he's been able to openly communicate with us is nothing short of astounding. But we hear it, Andy, over and over and over again, with these children that have been assessed with nonverbal IQs of 30, 40. My son, we avoided that. We didn't do an IQ test because I didn't like the number and I knew that it was going to be wrong anyway. Having this told in a feature film is, it's such a blessing. And having this told in this book coming out also, in a way that is user friendly. So this is not a documentary. This is a story, right?
Absolutely. This is a good old fashioned Western.
Mm-hmm.
A love story in the West.
Right. Now, and it doesn't star Clint Eastwood. Obviously, he's too old. Do you need an extra? No,
Always need extras.
a walk-in part. A walk-in. No, I cut my teeth on being an extra in a B movie called Hell Night. So, that was like the quintessential end of my high school career, was being in that movie. But
one person we're after, Brian, just to let you know, is are you a fan of Taylor Sheridan?
Oh yes. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
I'm very keen to talk to Taylor Sheridan. I think Taylor Sheridan would handle this very well.
Well, if you need a stalker, I'm your man. I
Taylor
am. I will.
Sheridan, could you do that?
I will stalk Taylor Sheridan mercilessly, and so you can get that interview, you can get that meeting.
After the third episode of COVID, I had myocarditis and was
Oh my
really
goodness.
very unwell.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, I was saved. I was saved by Peter McCullough. God bless Peter McCullough.
That's what I
saved my-
heard. I couldn't be more thankful.
no,
Peter
he saved.
McCullough is another hero. He's such a hero for taking care of you. And yeah, I had heard that it was a struggle. Myocarditis is not, it's not something to be toyed around with. And when they started with the vaccine, the normalization of myocarditis, which also you get from virus as well, was so offensive. Given the reality of that. When Protocol 7 was being made, was that during COVID?
That was during COVID, and when
Okay.
everybody on set had COVID, I had it very mildly for the third time.
Right.
But since then, I was going to say I've names. I've not been able to remember names. So
Really?
people I've known for years, just cannot pull them. It's like there's a dark hole in the center of my brain where everything falls in and can't be retrieved.
Knowing Protocol 7, knowing also Steve Kraling prior to the movie coming out, I was so thankful that this story got out. Was there anything in making Protocol 7 which, if you could briefly describe the premise of the movie, I don't want to butcher it, you'll do better justice than I will. What was the most stunning thing that stuck out for you when you were researching the movie and making the movie Protocol 7?
Well, what was extraordinary? So what happened was years ago I met Steve and he handed me these documents from Merck which confirmed the fraud.
Right.
And it was based upon those documents that the film was made. Since then, clearly the legal case was filed against Merck, and there was discovery, and there was a massive dump of documents far in excess of what we had available to make the movie. So there was a moment there where you're thinking, oh no, we're going to discover something in here that says we're wrong, we've misrepresented the situation, we've discredited Merck unjustly. And no, in fact, quite the opposite. The documents revealed that the case against Merck was even stronger than we had previously imagined. But it was necessarily a story based upon the documents that were available to us at that time. What's interesting, Brian, is that the case was lost.
Right.
The case was won by Merck. Why? Not because Merck didn't commit fraud, but because the judge said, look, the government, in the form of the CDC's Vaccines for Children program, continued to purchase the defective vaccine, and therefore it can't have been material. Well, that's absolutely bizarre. So it's perfectly okay for Merck to commit fraud, to defraud the doctors, the scientists, the government, the taxpayer, the parents, just defraud them all because the government carried on buying it. The government said, well, look, it's measles, mumps, and rubella. If we deprive children of the mumps vaccine, can we stop buying it? We also deprive them of rubella and measles. So no, we continue. And of course, there was a reluctance on the part of many in the government to accept that there was a problem in the first place. Merck could do no wrong, effectively. So
Right.
If it had not been for the film, then this issue would never have come to public attention. Because the case was lost, it wouldn't have attracted media attention, end of story. So this is one of the reasons that makes film so compelling. And it was a high-risk film, so we're having, there's the possibility that Merck are going to come down on us like a ton of bricks and sue us. But we felt confident that we had all of the information, and it's certainly enough, and that we'd done our due diligence, that we were not willfully misrepresenting anybody. We went ahead, and of course, we've heard nothing at all.
Well, they don't have a leg to stand on. I mean,
Yeah.
what you've done in portraying what they did, the fraud that they committed in terms of trying to quote unquote, demonstrate, quote unquote, durable immunity from the mumps virus that was in the vaccine. You can't make this stuff up. I wanted to ask you a question because in 1999, they started overfilling the vaccine. And I'm dumping that term out there, hoping that you'll define it better than I could. But they started this process of overfilling the vaccine. Do we know, do we really know what the upper bound is of the amount of mumps virus that they put into the MMR?
I have no idea. I don't think they have any idea either. It was
No.
almost entirely guesswork without any. It's like saying the dose of a drug isn't important.
Right.
You know, the adverse reactions from a drug are not influenced by dose. Absolute nonsense. Of course they are. So here they are applying a change in vaccine dose. They also found years ago that the mumps interfered with the measles virus. It interfered with the ability of the measles virus to induce immunity. Now, if you're going to increase the amount of mumps, you might well increase that effect upon the measles immunity, and so giving the measles vaccine complete waste of time. So the idea that 1 and 1 equals 3 is nonsense. It doesn't. It
Right.
equals something completely different.
Right. Well, it's there. There are so many things wrong with this. And because they started that overfilling process, you would think that the FDA would then have to go through another approval with that type of alteration and that type of change. But there was no, it was almost like it was a sleight of hand that FDA didn't know about, but wink wink kind of did know about.
Yeah. No, the relationship between these companies and the FDA is very, very unhealthy.
It's very wrong. And one of the things I want to show this to you someday because we need to spend some quality time together. I need my Andy time. Austin, Texas is now the health freedom hub of the universe. When you look at the VAERS reports of deaths and anaphylaxis around the MMR vaccine, everything starts at 1999. Wonder what happened then.
In the UK, we had, of course, the Urabi debacle, where the mumps vaccine was causing meningitis, and the government covered that up.
Right.
And then they begged Merck to make up their stocks of MMR because they had to suddenly withdraw that vaccine overnight when it became absolutely obvious that it was causing meningitis. So these are not innocuous things, and yet they're treated like that, aren't they, Brian? They're assumed to be safe until proven otherwise, when it should be completely the opposite. Particularly when they're going to be given to every healthy child, or are intended for every healthy child in the country. Now, the other thing is that, of course, beyond the end of the 90s, there was a dramatic increase in the vaccine program, including, vaccines that contained metals that acted as adjuvants or altered the immune response in their own right. You were adding more and more and more fuel to the fire of whatever was going on.
But looking at the bequests in formulating this screenplay that you're producing as a book and hopefully soon will be a movie, what sticks out to you? I mean, I love your perspective. I love your viewpoint in terms of doing the research for this movie, uh, learning about, spelling to communicate, RPM, spellers, whatever. What are some things that sort of enlightened you in putting together this screenplay?
Spellers, most certainly. A revelation that this child was so much more, that he'd been treated by everybody who was significant in the town, in the little town of Laramie as it was then, as a retard.
Mhm.
As the boy's a retard. Absolutely not. Not only, a deeply unpleasant reference to this
Right.
child, but one that was completely inaccurate. And the cruelness, the potential for man to be cruel, and the potential of mothers to be extraordinarily powerful, extraordinarily doing everything and anything they can to protect their child in this brutal environment. So, and this is something that I've witnessed time and time again over the years. And it introduces this idea that, and you'll be aware of this, but some form of connectivity theory, some sort of plausible theoretical basis for how two things, two elements, a mother and a child, once one entity, are forever inseparable, whatever the distance between them, this sort of interconnectedness, which now has a sort of an understandable theoretical basis in physics, as well as divinity, of course.
Right.
She understands him, she knows him, and in the end, that is part of their salvation, that she, without the spoken word, she knows what's going on with him and he with her. And part of what plays into that in this story is his relationship with a young Shoshone boy who has not lost these ancient wisdoms that allow people to communicate in ways that go beyond the routine speech and interaction.
Well, it sounds absolutely amazing. I mean, and the way that you handled that very, very sensitively, I appreciate in the advent of things like the telepathy tapes, that involves a lot of spellers and things like that. There is, obviously there is a mode of communication there that when a child is deprived one mode of communication, God loves that kid just way, way more than I do, speaking of my own son. And so there is a way to communicate. There is a way, always. You just keep going. There's one project after the next project after the next project that is bringing light to a society that lives in darkness. You were Semmelweist. You were absolutely Semmelweist. Not a whole lot of people come back from that. I mean, if you said, you know what, guys, I've done my bit, I'm calling it a day, absolutely would not blink an eye. You'd still be a hero in my eyes, but you keep it coming.
Well, you're very kind, Brian. I mean, the truth is, and I don't mean this to sound sanctimonious, but it's not about me. It's not about me. It's about something far more important, and that's these children and their families and how they are going to survive and thrive. And so I got over myself a long time ago, and as long as I have breath in my body, well, that's what I'm going to continue to do, is work on behalf of these children, these families.
Well, I can't thank you enough. You have done so much. I have to mention one of the things that enabled so many of these kids that are spelling now to be able to do this was getting them out of pain. And so your foundational work before and after the 1998 paper really set this in stage. It set this in motion. My son, if we had not hammered away against gut dysbiosis, looking at every possible angle because of that understanding, this is something that you've enabled. And again, I don't want to go on and on and on and embarrass you, but thank you so much. There's so many things that are foundational that would not have happened if you hadn't have done what you've done and continue to do what you're doing.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, and pass my love on to your family. And we will talk again, hopefully when you come down to Texas.
Absolutely. We've got to do it. And everybody watching, please tell them the hero, Andy Wakefield, Dr. Andrew Wakefield, on the show, Doctors and Scientists. Tell them you'll make their day. You'll make my day. And everybody have a wonderful Friday. Share this episode.
Brian, can I just say one thing?
Yes.
Which I forgot to say, and I'll be in terrible if I don't.
Absolutely.
There is a book release party on Instagram on June the 26th at 10 Central Time, 10 o'clock Central Time in the morning. It's live on Instagram at Andrew J. Wakefield. Please join us. We'd love to have you there. There's going to be a bunch of freebies, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some questions as well.
10 a.m. Central?
10 a.m. Central on the 26th of June on Instagram.
Instagram, Andy J. Wakefield. Make sure you check it out. Andrew J. Wakefield. Make sure you check it out. The book is available at most booksellers like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, you know, Is that correct?
From the 26th, yes.
On the 26th. Okay, pre-order now.
We're live now. Now, everybody, there is some background noise. There's speeches going on behind us, but we can't delay. We've got so many stories. We're going to keep going. So, tell us your name.
My name is Lynn.
And this is a story about your daughter.
Correct.
Take us back and tell us, when does it start? Because you've named this. I was warned, but I wasn't listening. I didn't listen. So tell us about it.
So it started in 1995. My husband and I had been trying to have a baby for about a year, and I had always babysat children. I loved children. I couldn't wait to have a baby of my own, and I wasn't getting pregnant, and I had a feeling that I wasn't going to be able to get pregnant, and I was working as a medical assistant in a family practice office, and a young girl came in with her mother. She was 16 and she was 20 weeks pregnant. And I asked the doctor, after the doctor saw them, what she was going to do with her baby. And the doctor said she's going to be giving it up for adoption. And I was like, oh my goodness, here's a baby. Like, I have a baby finally, maybe. And I said, can I adopt this baby? And he says, well, I don't know anything about the legalities of it, but you can certainly call them and ask them. And so I got her number and I called her and her mom within a few days. I had spoken with my husband and called her, and she called me back the next day and said, yes, you know what, I'd love for you to adopt my baby. And so I was ecstatic, because in 20 weeks I was going to be a mother. And so
But you had to go through legal papers and stuff, did you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hired an attorney. She didn't have health insurance. We hired an attorney for her as well. So she had representation, and we paid all her medical bills. That
Wow.
was agreed upon. Yeah. Fortunately, she had a natural birth, and it wasn't too expensive back in 1995, though expensive enough for us. So I was working, as I said, as a medical assistant, and I was giving vaccines at the time.
As in actually administering them to
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
Oh.
And one mother came in with her baby, and she wasn't vaccinating her baby. And the baby was like 6 months old, and her husband was going to school with my husband at the time. And she brought me some books, and she says, we don't vaccinate, I'll bring you some books and really think about this before you do it. So I brought the books home and I looked at them, but didn't read front to back. And I was young and I thought of it, but obviously I didn't put enough thought into it. And so our daughter was born. At the time, they were giving Hep B shots at 2 weeks old and not at birth. And I thought at 2 weeks she was too young to have a shot, so I waited. And at 2 months, I asked the doctors about how safe these vaccines were. And they said, it's the best thing you can do for your baby. You want to keep her healthy. So she got Hep B, Hib, DPT, and oral polio at the time. She was extremely fussy, screaming. I don't remember if she had a fever or not. I just remember her legs swelled really badly. I gave her some Tylenol, hindsight again, 2020, and told this was all normal, that she had a reaction like this. She continued on to get more vaccines, and about a year and a half old, I noticed her behavior getting peculiar. She wasn't looking at our eyes, she wasn't looking at our faces, she wasn't listening to us really well. And I brought her to the doctor and said, something's not right. And he said, I don't have time to spend with you, to go play in the waiting room with her to see what you're talking about, but I trust you're probably anxious about being first-time parents, but I'll send her to child development services to be evaluated. So the nurse came to our house. She passed with flying colors. she continued on with her strange behaviors. She was tested again the following year. She was diagnosed with sensory integration dysfunction. She went to physical therapy and occupational therapy for a couple of years before kindergarten.
Were you still vaccinating her all the way up to this point?
I was.
On schedule?
Yep.
Okay.
Never thought about the vaccines, really.
Nope.
Even though I had seen those books, but it said people dying from shots, I guess. Or, 'cause nothing horrible happened. She was just displaying some behaviors that weren't typical to me. Where was I at?
So she's about to go to kindergarten?
Yeah, they said she doesn't need services anymore. Her handwriting was horrible. I didn't know any better, so she went to kindergarten. We PET'd her. She had a pupil evaluation team meeting every year through elementary school and junior high. Second grade, she was diagnosed with ADHD and started meds. Something still wasn't right with her. Like her friends were maturing, but she wasn't.
And she was on medication now for ADHD?
Yeah, she started on a stimulant, which calmed her down, but something still wasn't right about her. And finally, in middle school, I brought her to the doctor and I said, something's wrong. I can have all the ingredients out for lasagna and she'll ask me what's for supper. And he says 99.9% of the time when a mom says there's something wrong with their child, they're absolutely right. And so he sent me to a neuropsychologist and she was evaluated. There was like a 1.5 year wait list. And she was diagnosed with autism. And I didn't know whether to cry or scream. But I finally had a diagnosis that I had been thinking about that the few years prior, but she had had a psychological evaluation when she was 4. We were told we were bad parents. Her behavior was our fault. She had the psychiatrist that she was getting her ADHD meds from. I asked him about autism. He said no, she'd be banging her head against a wall if she had autism. It couldn't be. So finally we had this diagnosis. And that was in, I don't even remember the year. It doesn't matter anyway. And then in the meantime, we had a natural born child 6.5 years after our first child was born. And I questioned vaccines again, still not making the connection. And we vaccinated her, but new vaccines had come out between 1995 and 2001. So our second daughter didn't get anything that our first daughter didn't get, because I figured if she didn't need it, certainly our younger daughter doesn't need it. So she didn't get as many, but after our second daughter had her MMR shot, after her first birthday, she stopped talking. And it lasted for months. The only word she would say was mama. And before that, she was developmentally advanced. She was saying all kinds of words at her first birthday. Fortunately, she started speaking again. And then the H1N1 shot came out in 2008, 2009. And I gave my kids that shot. And my little one was complaining of stomach aches every morning. So I called the school nurse and I said, ever since she got that shot, she's been complaining of stomach aches. And she said, yeah, a lot of kids have been complaining about stomach aches since they got that shot. And I was like, okay, I'm done. If these are supposed to be good for you, they shouldn't be hurting.
So that was it. The swine flu shot was the one that made you say, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And you stopped all vaccines after that? How are they today?
Our older daughter is high functioning. She works, she drives, but she'll always live with us. She has other health problems at this time. Our younger daughter started speaking spontaneously again months later. She's always been sick. She's had tubes in her ears. She's always tired and unwell. But if she has children, she'll never vaccinate.
So you said the title of this is that, someone tried to warn you and you didn't listen. So what is your message to that young mother out there? What is your warning to them?
To listen. We have nothing to gain by doing this. My whole family thinks I'm crazy except for my sister. I lost my job because I didn't get the COVID shot. My sister-in-law said I don't deserve to be a nurse because I don't believe in science. I tried to warn her grandchildren of the shots, and she just didn't listen. It's heartbreaking.
It is heartbreaking. I'm sorry. Did you ever see the birth mother again of your eldest child?
Yes. And she has 2 more children. 2 daughters, and actually one of them is due, her oldest one is due to have a baby in March. And I'm in touch with the birth grandmother. She's the one that told me. And I said, I'm going to send her some books. So I am going to send her.
I am going to give you some books to send her, and you can send her the VAX 2 DVDs out there. The VAX on VAX book is out there. Whatever you need to send.
Thank you.
No, you absolutely. We'll save that baby.
Yes, we're going to save that baby.
Thank you for being brave and coming on here and talking about this. And I'm sorry you lost your job. I'm sorry you found out the hard way like we all did.
Yeah, we found out.
We're going to sign some names on the bus.
%46% of the American people say mandates are dangerous, they're damaging, and vaccine science isn't settled.
A steady decline of childhood vaccine rates.
Vaccination rates continued to decline last year.
There's a discourse about vaccines that didn't exist before.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense.
Children's Health Defense is the leader in the health freedom movement.
The Department of Health and Human Services is overhauling the immunization schedule, now only recommending 11.
We are making recommendations that are science-based, that are common sense.
Secretary Hegseth discarding the mandatory flu vaccine requirement.
Your body, your faith, and your convictions are not negotiable.
People recognize you have to be able to make an individualized decision.
For the first time, the U.S. FDA will acknowledge that COVID-19 vaccines killed American children.
States are putting in place medical freedom laws. There's bills in Congress that Children's Health Defense is supporting, the GRACE Act for the right to religious exemptions, the End the Vaccine Carve-Out, ending liability protection, and Tom Massey's bill to repeal the PrEP Act.
One of the most aggressive medical accountability lawsuits in decades.
Suing the American Academy of Pediatrics.
CHD is suing under RICO laws, claiming that the AAP operates as a criminal enterprise and has for decades.
A federal judge yesterday blocked Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s recent overhaul of the nation's childhood vaccine schedule.
They basically just froze all vaccine policy.
The American Academy of Pediatrics and other medical groups filed a lawsuit arguing the vaccine changes violated federal law.
Which is outrageous for a single judge sitting in Boston to stop any work at the Centers for Disease Control related to vaccines.
This conflict between medical freedom and medical coercion, it's a fundamental conflict that we must resolve now in favor of medical freedom or forever be truly slaves to medical tyranny.
I am so glad that there are people like you who are still fighting this.
Children's Health Defense. If you don't know what they do, folks, look it up.
We have got to, as a society, global, decide, is medical coercion okay, or do you have a right to decide what happens to your body?
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.